Fantastic. So now we're recording. And so I'm going to go ahead and let Nora kind of discuss what has the PMAP Institute been up to. We'd love to hear more about it than just your upcoming webinar. We'd love you to just kind of give us an overview of what you've been doing for the last year or so since we've last spoke about it.
PMAP Institute, I put the link to the chat. So it aims to be more of a network maybe for the academics working in the field of participatory mapping, or that's maybe somehow how we envision it. Me and Chris Raymond and Marketta Kyttä were putting it up a couple of years back, and the reason kind of why we did this was that there was a legacy from Greg Brown, his big website which contained a lot of information, and then Greg's wife contacted us that website is kind of license based, and she didn't know what to do with that. And then we as colleagues of Greg thought that, okay, there's a lot of interesting and important material, and somehow we should need to preserve this legacy. And then, well, maybe the first idea was to kind of repeat that in another system, sort of. But then when we started to think about it and discuss more widely, we decided that, okay, we could also build up a more academic community around participatory mapping here. And that's what we did. And if you click the link that I shared, or maybe you have already been on the site, I also see that we are kind of a sister organization of ISPM or association, and what we would like to see is a close collaboration. And personally, of course, I'm also involved in ISPM activities. So maybe that's it to put the long story short. You can check the website and see more details. And there's also a link to join if you're interested to be listed as one of the members on the site and so on. Then what happened is that we weren't actually so active lately in sharing news or updates or so through this Participatory Mapping Institute. But then we now thought that we will launch a webinar series, and the first webinar is taking place next week on Tuesday, is it the 24th of May? And we have Jirka Panek and Ian Babylon talking about 100 plus shades of your participation. I'll put a link to this to the chat as well. So you're very welcome to join and listen. And I very well know that ISPM is also having a webinar series, and because we all know that it's a bit of organizing to like make these things happen, I contacted Carla because we thought that it might be good to discuss if we would run parallel these webinars of PMAP and ISPM, so that every half a year or so they could, they could follow each other. So that was kind of the idea. And yeah, I'm happy to respond any questions you have, and give more details on specific topics if you're interested. And sorry about the noise of the background. Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for Nora? Nora, how do you think we could best support you? What would that kind of partnership look like in your guys' eyes?
Well, in terms of this webinar series, I think it would be very good if we both promoted the webinars from both associations. So that would be kind of the easy step. And I saw, Carla, that you had announced it. At least I got the message to my mailbox that something was happening in the Mighty Networks. And yeah, that being aware of our activities in terms of the journal, I see also many, well, kind of lots of potential for collaboration and yeah.
Yeah, that sounds definitely very interesting and doable. In regards to the webinar and kind of promotions, who would we contact when we are having an upcoming webinar to get it on your website?
You can send it to me, the message about it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're circulating kind of the hosting role between the three institutions. I'm from the University of Turku, and then Chris from the University of Helsinki, and Marketta Kyttä from Aalto University, all of us located in Finland. But so we try to circulate, but you can send it to me, so then I can take care of organizing the sharing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I'm not hearing you very well. Which is the third institute involved? Is it Turku and Helsinki and
Aalto University. Marketta Kyttä is from Aalto University.
Thanks.
are there any other questions for Nora? Well, we would be happy to do that. We also are happy to make someone from the PMAP Institute a host on the network so that they can post and send out things directly to our membership when they would like to do that. So if that's something you're interested in, you can certainly do that. In regards to working with the journal, I think we should probably have an internal conversation about what everyone in the editorial committee would like that to look like before we make any types of commitments or promises. But I mean, I could see maybe having a special edition with your network where we try to figure out some topics that were interest to both the editorial board and your network.
Sounds good. And maybe we could help in finding reviewers for the papers that we know have expertise in some specific field of participatory mapping that the papers deal with. That might be something useful.
Yeah, that's great. We're actually going to push another round of outreach for our calls. So perhaps, Nora, if I sent it to you directly, if you could have them put it up on your website and share it with your network, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I actually wanted to ask about that because so for some reason that link that was in Carol Carvalho's email wasn't working. It went to some other page, so I was kind of lost.
Okay.
Please do send it to me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because we're going to talk about our plan for outreach today with the executive committee. So because there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
But I think that this sounds like a great idea. And does anyone have any reasons to discuss and why we wouldn't move forward with this promotion and cross collaboration? No. Okay. Well, please let everyone know that we're excited to work with you. And please, anytime you have something you want us to post, you can do that, or I can make you a host on the network, and you can also move through that. I think we have about 210 members, 220 members right now.
Yep. So, sounds excellent. Very nice to hear this, and you could make me the contact person so I can then post directly through my networks.
I will do that.
Yeah.
So everyone, don't miss out. May 24th from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. Central Eastern Time.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm sure it'll be a great presentation. I will unfortunately be on vacation, so I will not be able to watch it. Will they be recorded and placed in some repository somewhere?
hope so. We need to ask it from the presenters, but this is what I have in mind. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, maybe we could even cross merge that in some way, because we're holding all of these webinars on the Mighty Network. We record them all, and then we could possibly share that with you. You could put it up on your website and vice versa if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, that would be a good idea as well. Yeah, yeah. Yes, why not? Definitely. Yeah.
Just then they're in more places and they reach more people. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's the most important part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Good.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions for Nora about the PMAP Institute? If not, we're going to jump into some of our other agenda items. All right. Thank you so much, Nora.
Thanks, Carla.
Appreciate you. All right. So I'm going to hopefully have someone else speak momentarily so I can take notes. But for the International Journal of Participatory Mapping, unfortunately, Carolina can't be here. Her daughter was sick. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Right now, we have about 28 people registered on the platform where we're able to take papers and give them out to the editorial committee. We sent our call to about, I think it was a little over 1,600 departments across the globe, and have not gotten much of a response for the call, although it's not due yet. So it's not due until later into the summer. But we'd like to kind of brainstorm with you and the editorial committee and on the executive committee about how we might be able to better manage our resources and do outreach for getting papers to submit for our upcoming call. So right now it's just been via MailChimp and the network, but I think we might need to be doing more kind of individual outreach to our network, to particularly graduate students, non-tenured track who are interested in publishing to gain, career accolades, but also researchers and practitioners who are on the ground who normally might not be publishing is a very big interest to us at the journal. We're also interested in launching a map collection, so not necessarily having to write an entire article, but being able to publish maps itself. And so we haven't created the standards or guidelines for that yet, and we wanted to discuss that today about what that might look like and who would potentially want to put that together.
Charlotte, can you say more about that? So in my mind, the main references that I have for publishing maps is an online platform, right? So to be able to have a hub or something like that, to have a portfolio of different topic-centered maps and easily be able to tag and reference, etc. Are you kind of, but I'm thinking of what you're doing as a journal. So can you help me understand like the difference or how you envision a journal setting being able to post online maps, if in fact that's what you meant?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to kind of turn it back to the group, as I haven't seen very many journals that have set precedents for such a thing. So I think we're kind of very open to different ideas about what that might look like. I'm also open to building an addition onto the platform that kind of allows you to interact with the maps a little bit more. So we can really think more critically about, how would this be used, this information? Are people going to be referencing it as a way to learn more about map making and cartography? Or is this just to, feel like you're sharing your maps with more people? Are we going to have a comments feature so people can provide feedback on the maps? Or are they just static? Are they going to be interactive? These are all really great questions, and I would love feedback if anyone has any ideas about how they would like to see that done.
The Journal of Maps link that was sent is really interesting.
So the Journal of Maps is now enrolled into Taylor and Francis, but it was running externally by people in Kingston University for quite a while because there was nothing like that. And the idea is in cartography, it's a little bit easier because you basically have the final product at a certain point and you can share it. And what you can do with that is actually publish a specific map or a snapshot of a participatory map and kind of explain the background of it and the process that led to it and so on, so other people can refer to it and find more information for it. And I'm just thinking, for example, about approaching specific maps that are important within participatory mapping, and we can reach out for them. So say, reach out to get the green map, the original green maps from New York and things like that, and have a copy of that with some commentary from Wendy and few bits of information and something like that, and then you can share it as something that is not just very small inset inside the paper, but actually the map is the main thing, and it can then be used for different purposes, especially for learning, but also to recognize it. And the point is that the Journal of Map already got all the guidelines, and we can basically take them or work on them.
What do others from the editorial committee think? Mike, would you like to, you have your hand raised?
Yes, I did. It went up and down as Mookie was talking. No, I mean, basically I agree with Mookie. I mean, my feeling about Journal of Maps is it also started as just people talking about, no, I can't say random maps, but a whole range of different things, but it's realized that it has to be much more systematic, much more detailed, focused, analytic. And I think that would be the case if we were going to do something with maps and this, not to give the impression at all that this is just any old person's participatory map. There's thousands every year, tens of thousands every year. There would have to be a very specific focus for it. It could be then, as Mookie is saying, well, I think, yes, a focus on methodologies, approaches, problems, issues, particularly in participatory mapping, different forms of participatory mapping, but as analytic as possible and as what's the right word, useful for people to learn from about how to make their own, again, methodological issues plus practical issues, and yes, focus of starting with asking people to write about certain types of maps. It should be, I think it should be the type of mapping and what's necessary about mapping rather than participatory maps about this place and that place. Maybe that's something of interest to the regional setups for the Institute. They might be wanting to do, say, okay, specific maps of different types of different issues in Africa or Latin America or Europe or whatever. But more general, I think the focus should be on methodology.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you, Mike, is you think that there should be specific calls for maps, and would we also just generally, like we do with articles, if they're of interest and of a current topic, would we accept those as well? And Britta, I'll be to you in a moment. I do see your hand is raised.
No, sorry, I didn't. What was it? What was your last question? What was the last?
So, would we accept maps at an ad hoc basis on topics that are of current issue, or would we only allow for the submission of maps that are within the call?
But my first feeling was, first response would be not accept maps per se. You know, if you look at them the same way as other articles, you know, they have to be reviewed for everything. Maybe the map is a particular part of it. But I'm a bit worried about giving the impression to people who look at the site, that we will be a depository for anybody and everybody's participatory maps.
Okay, thank you for the feedback. Mike, Britta, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I think, well, that's a really good point, Mike. I think that's a really good point, because I was going to say the Journal of Maps, to me, it seems like it's like a lot of geologists who have beautiful maps, but their original publication is about the geology and not the map. So this is a secondary place where they can talk about how they made their beautiful maps. And so I do see the parallel, how that could be really useful in this context. But then I think one of the parts of participatory mapping, and I think Mike kind of hinted to this, is that some of the maps, the process is so beneficial, and that's what we generally write about, but the output doesn't necessarily communicate something to someone outside of that process because they haven't been trained in cartography. So I think that's where Mike was coming from. Like, we can't just make this a place to put the output. So yeah, I think we are going to have to be careful about how to curate that section. I do really like this idea, and I think it could be something really interesting and creative and beautiful, this art and science combined. But yeah, I think we have to be careful that it doesn't become this like dumping ground of maps.
So what I'm hearing is that we should have a defined framework that potentially asks questions strategically that will draw out methodological answers. I think that that's a really good idea. I think it'll be helpful, and it'll be also a learning tool for people who go and visit the map kind of hub. Renee, did you have something you wanted to add to that, since you can't find that stupid raise hand button?
Yeah, I guess I'm paying the price for ignoring all the update boxes for Skype. So why can't we initially be a dumping ground for maps? I always am worried about making this too top down. If we have a map, I'm thinking like the ESRI map book, and an explanation, and maybe if there are 3 to 5 questions that you ask of any applicant, it's like, I don't know, why did you do the map? What's new? What methodological challenges do you have? Those sorts of things that can tack on to the explanation, that's relatively lightweight. And then we can decide how much or how little we want of maps. Maps are a very nice way for people who are not used to doing academic writing. It relieves the pressure on us to copy edit academic pieces from non-academicians. So I think it's a win-win for us, with a possible exception of if we ever wanted printed versions of the journal, that's where it's going to cost us. But if it's all digital, then we don't have to worry about issues of color, because if we go printed, we may want grayscale, and that adds another element of complexity. But yeah, initially, why don't we just ask for maps and see what we get and see how good the explanations are. And if we don't like, if we're being deluged with maps, then we cut back and we ask people to be more methodological.
Any comments, feedback on what Renee just said? Go ahead, John.
I like the idea, but I think also it's important to maybe have, categories or sections within the site so that we can differentiate, the contribution of maps, which I think there's a great value in that, particularly if there's a framework built around, how people share not just methods, but I think also sort of outcomes and impact is also really important. But I also think that there should be a space for, for graduate students and profs to be able to also reflect on sort of methodologies, the theorizing behind participatory mapping, and I think that to have that all sort of mashed together like spaghetti bolognese probably wouldn't be, the best way, but for us to, differentiate somehow within the site between these, between different types of contribution.
So it sounds like there's a mix of opinion about how flexible we should be in our submission framework. I think we could obviously talk about this at our actual upcoming journal meeting, but I thought perhaps some people from the executive committee might have unique feedback. I wish Rudo was here. I do want to stress kind of what Renee said about not making it too difficult for those who are not technically trained in cartography, because there are some amazing graphic designers that have done really great things with maps who might not be able to really speak at a higher academic level about their methodology. And so maybe we could, like what Renee and John said, have certain questions that help to guide it, but maybe are not necessarily requirements, and have it a little bit more open. I do like the thought of having a space with a forum where people can ask questions about the map, and then the authors can answer those questions. I'm not sure if I'm sure we could set something up like that using our current website. And if that doesn't look nice, we can always build something out and then reference to it. I can set up another server and build something around that. I think what we need next moving forward would be some help in determining what those questions are going to be, and what that framework is going to look like. I can certainly pull from the links for the map journal and pull some of that language into a document, but I think that we should kind of send out the questions round robin style and get feedback and have people leave comments and suggestions. How does that sound? Okay, so me and Carolina will do that. She's going to reach back out and get your availability for the week of June 13th, because I ended up having to take holiday because I finished my PhD, so I'm going for my hooding ceremony. And I've also won my public service award at my university in best dissertation nomination. So I'm very, very excited about that. But we'll come back and we'll send this out, so we'll have an opportunity to add comments before we meet the week of June 13th. Now, I think it's important that we talk about the call. Sad facing. Too much happiness. John just had to throw the sad face out there. And then, so in regards to this call, I'm not sure how best to disseminate this information. I would like to pull from the editorial board's experience being on other journals to get feedback on what are the best ways, where should we be publishing and cross-referencing. We are having more comments in the chat section. Any feedback? Is Skype broken? Can you hear me? Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Hear you.
Okay, I just couldn't tell if someone was talking and then not coming through. I mean, we're going to send out another round of calls. We discussed as the executive committee, we would like to put together an article. It doesn't really fit into any particular call, but it would just kind of provide an overview of our history at ISPM, and then also kind of our future and what we would like to do with our hubs. I guess if you have any ideas on how you think we should best structure our call, let us know. But also please do, when we send it to you, share it on all of your other networks that you have available. Is anyone on the call planning on submitting anything to the journal on any of the calls that we created? I know I probably feel like I've just been bothering you for years now, because a number of you have also been working on this book with me, so I feel like I'm just bothering you all the time for more writing. I'm sorry,
Charlotte,
friends.
do you already cross post with other mapping networks and the conferences that they generally have annually? Like, I know Esri just had their developers conference, but they're having the August conference. That seems like a built-in audience. A lot of those folks a lot of our folks who do participatory mapping go to those conferences, and so wondering about cross-posting at those existing events.
I think that that's a really great idea. I have been out of the conference kind of circuit for the last few years, having just had a child and working on finishing up my dissertation and this book for Springer. But I think that that's a fantastic idea. And I think we once, at least internally at the executive committee, talked about having like a one-pager to bring with us to conferences to share with the group so everyone would have access to that. I think that one-pager would now need to be updated to also include the journal's information. But perhaps that's something that we can work on and get that around, as long as everyone is committed to using it and actually speaking about these opportunities at conferences. I think it would also be nice to kind of create a norm about sharing out when we're going to conferences as well, and trying to encourage others in the membership to attend conferences. And so that way we know, oh, okay, this person's going to this conference. Let's check in and make sure that they have the materials that they need. And since we're starting to do things more and more in person now, I think it's a good time to kickstart that up again. Mike, you have your hand raised.
Yes. Yeah, back to what you were just asking about the journal or potential contributions to the journal. I'm got kind of confused as to the journal, the deadlines, and so on. In fact, I did write to you a while ago, and to others, to find out what it is, because it was to me confused information on what the deadlines are now for the different special issues. So that's all I'm saying. Yes, I would be interested to contribute, but I'm a bit lost as to what the deadlines are now.
Yeah, I think probably what we'll end up having to do is changing this one to August. And I think we talked about it once before. But the issues are all, the submission dates are all on the call on the journal's website. And so we were gonna resubmit these, but they're pretty much, if you have a paper that's outside of the call, you can, and it's of current topic, you can message us and ask if it's of interest, and we'll discuss it at our next board meeting. And if it's a topic that's timely, we will usually accept them at any time and then publish them for you after rigorous review. But the goal was to try to get articles submitted based off of specific topics. Our first one was unraveling the history, theory, scope, and politics of participatory mapping. I was going to try to find a group of people. I think, if at the very least we could work together to produce some works, that would also be great too, because there's, if we have 6-7 of us, writing a journal article isn't going to be too difficult. But we have to figure out, what topics speak to us. As I said, I'm going to start leading this summer the article for ISPM. We're going to get this together. We're going to bring back some of our old executive committee members to also provide feedback and additions to that article. But you're always welcome to submit on any of these issues this year and into next year at any time. And what we'll do is we'll put it through the editorial committee. You'll have to revise as needed if we accept it with revisions. And then we will publish it as they come. And then once we have an issue together, we will send out the entire issue to all of our members across ISPM, whoever's signed up for the journal, but then also at the PMAP Institute. Yes, Renee?
I still find the wording confusing. And I would suggest the following. One, to explicitly mention in that introductory section, we welcome articles that do not fit the themes of the issues, or like at any time we welcome articles that do not fit the themes. Second, I don't know how we do this exactly. What happens if someone says, I have an article that I could finish by June or August of 2022, that technically would be in issue number 4, but I'm submitting it right now. Do I have to wait until 2024 to see it in print or have a publication date? So I think we should make it clear what the publication date and what the DOI is for people who submit, because I like the idea, I've always liked the idea of having directed special issues, but it does sound a lot like you slot into this idea or else in the wording. So if we could have those caveats in that first section, that I think that would help us a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we could be more clear in that as well. Mike, did you have a question?
In response to Renee's point, I think we'd raised this before. There are some good MDPI journals, whatever we think about them, and some of them have, I think, a very good strategy for special issues. As soon as the paper has been cleared, and we have some doubts about it, but when they do it properly, as soon as it's been cleared, it's online. And then when all the 8 or whatever it is are collected, then it becomes their special issue. And this seems to me this is a win-win for everybody, because your paper is already online beforehand. The journal themselves say, hey, we get a double thing out of this as well. We get the paper out, and then eventually we say, a year later or whatever it is, here's the special issue with all the papers in it. I really think that's a good strategy. I mean, with Acme or what it was called, it was the opposite of that. They had to wait like 2 or 3 years before everybody had finished. So the paper put in was kind of out of date by the time they actually produced it. I really think that's a bad approach, and it's bad for everybody. No, I think, as I said in response to Renee, when the paper is accepted, it's already online and it says it will be part of a special issue, number 4 or whatever it is.
Yeah, Mike, just a tiny bit of pushback, and this is not going to be uniform for all people involved, so I don't want to disadvantage anyone, but for people like me, the paper doesn't count for my own career, and I'm assuming some others, until it actually has a publication date. So the online first digital stuff doesn't actually count.
Okay, got it. But then you better get your university to be a bit more sensible about things.
Fair enough.
I know, I take your point. See.
So it sounds like to me that me and Carol need to sit down and revise some of the language so that it's a bit clearer on the website and in our outreach. I think having connections with some of the associations and other organizations that hold conferences would be great. I think some of Ali was really our connection with the Geographic Association. Rudo was our connection with Esri, so it would be really helpful that if you have connections with these, sorry, my son's home for 2 weeks. If we could talk about those connections a bit more, and I can send you those materials to share with them, and you could act as an advocate for us on behalf of the journal. That would be very helpful. So I think that me and Carol have our marching orders on what to do next for the call. And like, as I said, I'm going to be sending out another email as well, probably cross. So if you're interested in kind of leading a paper, but you need help and support writing it, we can also find, like I said, junior scholars to help support you and specifically target and reach out to them. I think they just do better if you give them a topic, like a very kind of strict topic and framework, and then they're like, okay, yeah, let me write. And so if you're interested in doing that, please do reach out to either me or Carolina. Otherwise than that, I think I'm going to take the last 13 minutes just to review kind of what we've been working on at ISPM in regards to our decentralized hubs. Are there any other questions or concerns about the call? No? Great. So I'm not sure how many of you from the journal are members of our Mighty Network, but right now we have a network where we're able to post things, activities. I do a lot of posting of funding opportunities because that's what I do at my role at Michigan State University is help faculty create interdisciplinary research teams to go after federal and international funding for development research. So you'll see that I constantly post things if they have to do with the environment or cartography, and try to connect people with those opportunities. There are some people who post about events that maybe their organization holds, training workshops, etc. In this space. But we're also have been talking about how can we get our users more engaged. And one thing that is a topic that comes up all the time is that they would like to have spaces that are more regional focused and find and connect with those who are in their actual geographic location. This obviously helps with language barriers. This helps with funding issues as well, because most of them are regional and state, national level funding. So we had this idea to create essentially they're called committees here, but we'll probably change that to the word hubs. One for all of the regions that are used in the United Nations framework. And essentially what we would be looking at, and we're sending out a survey to our membership, which I sent out into the email yesterday. If you'd like to participate, please do complete that survey. Understanding what role would people be interested in taking? Essentially, we would like to have a leader or several leaders for each hub, and we would create a research framework where we would try to identify, they would go out and follow the framework and identify what are the organizations in that region that really dominate the field of mapping and participatory mapping? What are the biggest funders in the region so that they could share that information in their hubs? And then to also recruit memberships into the hubs and kind of have that be a space that's centrally located regional information. And so you can see that we already have some people who have already joined specific hubs, but not a lot because we haven't been advertising it or anything yet, where this has kind of been a data collection phase and trying to see people's perspectives. But I'm hoping that we'll approve the survey today. I sent it out, so please do go through it. If there's some issue with the survey or there's additional questions that we want, please let me know as soon as possible, because I plan on sending this out the first week of June to get feedback. And then we will move forward with designing a program for the hubs, and then reaching out and working with the associations and potentially the PMAP Institute to kind of refocus that back in. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns about the hubs?
Hey, Charlotte, in a best case scenario where many people say, yes, I want to lead a particular regional hub, what is your, first of all, I think that would be great. And what is your thought on sort of co-leading, co-management of that and what that would look like?
Yeah, I think that that's why we would need to provide a very thorough program that would help guide them through and would provide some methodology for searching for different types of regional information that we think is going to be most useful to them. And so I think we talked about it last time about not having too strict like requirements of like you have to do this, because we want these regionals to be owned by the people who are in them, and for them to be able to prioritize which aspects are most important to them. But I think having a guidebook that says, you know, here are some things that have been relevant to us in the past in our own kind of regional settings. This is what we, you know, advice and guidance we can provide you. But again, this is make it your own. So if there are things outside of this framework that you would like to include in your hub, please do. And I think we'll be surprised at what we haven't actually thought about in the framework and what other people in the hubs will do. I think also having encouraging regional meetings of some sort, quarterly, and then having them report back once a year with everyone, so all of the leaders of the hubs, to just talk about what's working well, what's not working, how can higher level executive functioning help support the hubs better. And then hopefully we might be able to take some of the data from these hubs, like how many people are in them, what types of data they've collected, and support them more with some funding, funding for conferences or funding for travel. That's kind of how I see that. And then we could, you know, divide that up amongst the hubs and they could apply for it on some sort of regular basis. But I want to get people using them first and be able to provide proof of concept before I go to any potential funders.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I guess my one comment would be that, and I said ideally, I think ideally, you know, there would be people, I mean, these hubs are enormous geographic scales, right? And so they're not homogenous in terms of what people would want or what people think would be important. And so ideally you would have a number of people raise their hand to say from across that geography to say, yes, I want to help lead this. In the event that we don't have that, I think on the back end, we'd really want to be strategic about trying to find some folks to bring together to have that cohort lead for that particular region, if that makes sense. I think putting it all on one person is really difficult and daunting. But I also think the co-benefit of having a number of folks is obviously you have more voices and representation and what things might feel really relevant or important in terms of sharing and with what networks to share with.
I think that's a great point. I'm not sure if it was John or Mike who raised their hand first, so I'm just gonna call on Mike because he's the first one in line at top.
Okay, I think it was John actually, but no, I don't mind jumping. No, just a point about that. Yes, I think the hubs is a great idea. I like the name is a better one as well. I think the idea of not getting, well, first absolutely number one is different hubs will behave in different ways for a whole lot of different reasons, and therefore they may also have a different management setup or different leading setup. But myself, I think the idea of sharing it among several people is perfect. I'm thinking Latin America, there's several languages to deal with anyway. Well, that's true in all the regions, obviously. So that's right. Just a quick comment on the questionnaire, which as it was put out, because I looked at it yesterday. First of all, it says which hubs, regions are you interested in, and then I think on the next page it says something like, would you be interested in leading one? But I think several people put down more than one region, but they don't want to lead all of them. So there's some confusion in the way the questionnaire is set up, and that's exactly for myself. I love to be a member of several of the different regions, but obviously not leading all of them. But otherwise, I agree with the points which are being made. But flexibility, I think, is number one. There can't be one rule for all the different areas.
That's great feedback, Mike. I really appreciate it. I think knowing that they're just interested in leading, period, will help us to follow up with them, because I'd like to have a meeting and actually have a focus group to hear about what aspects most interest them and why, and particularly about topics that we might not have had in the survey itself or that we've discussed as a committee, so that we can include that in the written framework, and also maybe have them co-draft the framework together with us. Obviously, I don't want to put the work entirely on them, and I'm willing to put work in to do that. But I think having them co-create it will create some sort of ownership over the project as well. So I do plan on following up with them. John?
Fundamentally, I really like the idea of hubs. Certainly, with the PPGIS net, we created a series of different linguistic-based hubs there. My only slight caution is that, are we large enough to already be fractured? What networking opportunities do we lose by all hiving off into our individual regions? We're not a particularly large group already, and really society is ultimately about networking, meeting new people, making new connections. And so I would just be a little bit cautious, unless there's a really compelling reason for us to already be hiving off into separate groups, other than convenience, meeting times and language. Just to think about whether if it is something we're going to move ahead with, how we're going to create those opportunities for touch points and other networking between different individuals, not just representatives of these different hubs, in meaningful ways.
I think that's really important feedback, Chad. Thank you. And it's definitely something we should consider moving forward and ensuring that we're still bringing people together across the regions, and not losing that kind of connectivity that we've been working towards. And I think that, and I wouldn't say this is necessarily a convenience thing. I think this is actually more work on the executive committee. But I hear this a lot from our memberships of wanting to know regional based information that we just don't have. Because our executive committee times are hard for them to meet with. Oftentimes our executive committee are primarily European American, or those within that time zone. And so I would like to see just some kind of self-initiative and use of the space by others. And right now it seems probably for lots of those outside of those regions that it's just our executive meetings, and then sometimes we do these webinars, and we're really focused in this next webinar to make sure that it's taking information and providing space from a different geographic region that we don't always hear from the most, and we're also making sure that they're allowed, they're enabled to speak in their own primary first language in the webinar as well, which I think is going to be really helpful, and I'm so thankful that we have all of these different software systems that can do real life translations in real time. So I think we're going to have better connectivity because of it, not necessarily less. I want to be aware of the time. It is 10, so I've kept you for another hour of your lives. I just really appreciate everyone staying committed to the work that we're doing, working together across organizations, even though we have slightly different agendas. I think that we're really moving in the right kind of area of coordination and cross-pollination for us to create new activities and things for us to do. And we're just very much committed into decentralization techniques and also technology and digital spaces to work instead of contributing to CO2 emissions by traveling far places for conferences and kind of forcing people from historically underrepresented areas of the world from flying to Europe and America all the time to be able to connect with us. And so those continue to be one of our biggest objectives going forward. And so, you know, we look forward to working with you. And next time we'll have Carolina come to one of our executive committee meetings so that you can also meet her more, and hopefully we can continue. And if you would like to attend this meeting at other times or vice versa, our journal meeting, please feel free to stop in. And I'll be posting updates on the network about our journal as well. If you have not already, please go to our journal's website and register as a member so that you can get regular updates also from the journal on various calls and upcoming deadlines. Does anyone else have anything else you'd like to add or any suggestions for the committee moving forward on things that you think we should be working on or should be in our peer review?
Thank you for all your hard work, Charlotte. Really appreciate it. And congratulations, that emoji thing for some reason wasn't working. That was supposed to be smiley face. I wasn't going to risk doing it again, but thank you.
Yes. Mike?
Yes. Look forward to your break, and you. I mean, you look forward to your break, and the goodies which are coming up for you. That's fantastic. That's really good. Just to remind people that the webinar is going ahead. I now seem to have lost my screen properly. I can't. It's not working properly. But we are having the webinar on 16th of June. That's not very far away, about a month away, with people from Argentina, from Mexico, and from Brazil. It will be in Spanish and Portuguese, but supposedly we're going to get instant subtitling translations from Zoom for other people to watch it. I won't go into more of the details. I guess we'll be sending it out, but to remind everybody that is coming up. It's going to be a great bunch of people. Iconoclastistas from Argentina are really very, very well known in Latin America. They do some terrific work. Geo Brujas, it's a feminist cartography group based in Mexico. And the other one is Observatorio de Mapeamento Participativo in Brazil. I think it'll be a fun thing to listen to.
I'm very excited. Thank you so much, Mike, and Abigail, and everyone who's pushed and pushed and pushed to make sure that this gets done and gets done properly with individuals who really specialize in the field topic that we chose. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a good rest of your May, and hopefully your weather is beginning to be nice. It snowed here in Michigan until May 3rd.
Okay.
Snowed in Vancouver last week.
And it's boiling here.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I will be in touch shortly.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Charlotte, as usual.
Thank you.
For herding the cats.
Herding the cats.
Okay. Cheers.
Cheers.